Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Aletta Caldwell, and you've come to the Urban Nonprofit. I said I'm going to go ahead and go live as an online teacher. I'm used to just talking to the screen to myself, but if anybody's here, just jump on, say hello. And so, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about, and I have my notes, the role that nonprofits can play in preserving Black history. This is the Urban Nonprofit Channel, and I'm doing all things to help African American nonprofits thrive and stay compliant and stay sustainable. And I focus on African American nonprofits because we have a rich history. Again, the first recorded African American nonprofit was in 1693, the Society of Negroes. And we don't have this history. And that's what I want to talk about today. 5 things we can do to preserve our history. And I'm just going to go back to the story that started it all with me and why I thought it was important to focus on African American nonprofits. When I was working on my dissertation, we have to write a chapter as a literature review. And it talks about all the literature that we need to solidify our expertise in what we're writing about. And my chair at the time said, he put in the email that I needed to write about the history of African American nonprofits. And though I was studying it, that was my subject, that's what I was looking at, I scoffed. That was my first thing. And I remember thinking, what history? Which is even more amazing because I grew up in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So, how I could think that shows how much society has diminished Black history. So, as I was looking into it, it was not only even the AME Church in the 1700s. That's when I found out about the Society of Negroes in 1693. So, even more than ever, when we're living in this polarized situation and environment where people want to diminish who we are, diminish the fact that we've been doing mutual aid societies before we were even considered people on these shores. Even though in Africa we were known for our hospitality, it's in our DNA, and Black philanthropy is all about giving of ourselves, giving of what we have for the community. We still don't know that we have a rich history of philanthropy and giving and community development. And so it's my desire and my passion to help African American nonprofits help solve our problems in our community. If some of them are our own, some of ours are not. But I'm here for to help anybody who wants to do that. So if you're looking for answers for your nonprofit, your individual nonprofit, check me out at www.beyondexisting.com. And if you just want to join the community of African American nonprofits, sorry about that, check me out at the Urban Nonprofit. So I'm running both of these. Beyond Existing is for everybody. The Urban Nonprofit is a community of African American nonprofits. But to get into our subject today, we're going to be talking about 5 key points of what you can, as a nonprofit leader, preserve African Black history. And when I say Black history, what you're doing in your organization is Black history. It's not an easy role for anybody who's trying to run a nonprofit, particularly an African American one. One of the things that I learned again when I was writing my dissertation was we have access to fewer resources. So we think because we don't pull in the millions all the time that we're not doing the work. But the problem is, again, is how Black philanthropy is. It's different. We give of ourselves, our little, for the community. Therefore, we may not pull in as much. One key thing I have found too is that our issues are not thoroughly understood by the wider community, or I can say not cared about through the wider community. So what happens is we don't get as much money as well. But that does not negate that we have stories. Nonprofit, our stories is our cachet. That's what is we're rich in resources, our stories. And if we don't get those stories, then we're here in 2025 thinking we don't know how to run nonprofits or what we're doing has little effect. So the first thing you should do is called documenting your untold stories. You need to start going out in the community and talk about how people are impacted because you're there and document it. If it's not documented, it hasn't happened. And that's just how it is nowadays. And one of the key things I have found is we don't document our successes enough. So if you're a nonprofit leader or you're running a nonprofit, write down those stories, write down those testimonies, record them, pull out your camera and start recording them. Also, your origin story. Why did you get into this in the first place? Very important to understand that. So go ahead and start documenting. Get that journal out. When you're talking to people, why do you come here? Why do you donate to us? All of that. Start documenting those stories. Start getting those narratives. Like I said, I grew up in the AME church, and one story that I learned about, I used to run Camp Baber. And one of the stories I learned was the reason we were able to get the camp in the first place is because a woman, unnamed, notice she's unnamed, put a second mortgage on her home so that the church can get the camp property. They still own it to this day. You want to have those stories documented because we just take this stuff for granted. And again, Black philanthropy, since we're always just giving of what we have, we may not go out there and get, stones, and we're not going to have Carnegie libraries, but we have the testimony of these women, these washerwomen, and all these people who have sacrificed something to give. Document that untold story and make it told and put it in writing so we can have it. Another thing, once you start pulling those stories, archive them so that somebody else can find out that information. Don't make a little researcher scared doctoral student have to dig around and find out these things. Tell the story, archive it. We have clouds, we have servers, we have everything. You have a flash drive. Start taking those stories of all of our history. And this is happening now, but this is a cultural heritage. I've heard a lot of people who tell me about their nonprofit stories and how they started or why they started. I've heard fabulous stories, but we don't document them again. And once you document them, again, number 2, archive it. Then start providing education about our history. We, in the past, before the Civil Rights era, during the Civil Rights era, was the Black church. For me, the way I look at churches in my research is the ecclesiastical organizations. And I'll talk about that later in another video. But we were, the church was the place that educated us. I've been hearing a lot now, hey, we need to start back those Saturday schools. Those Saturday schools started in church basements. A lot of who I am today has started in the church. But even the rec centers, these community centers, if you're running an organization, there is some kind of educational part. If you're passing out food, have postcards with African-American history on it. Start bringing awareness to our history. When people are coming to your organization week after week, while you're asking them why they come, explain why you started. It may not be so I'm trying to think of the word, obvious to everybody why you're doing it. Start educating people about the contributions and experience of Black people. Start telling them about the board members. If you're a founder, start telling your story. Make people aware. I bet a lot of people even come to you and don't even know you're Black ran. Start getting out there and telling the story and making them aware. And then 4 is this advocacy and policy influence. Like I said, a lot of people in the wider community don't even understand our issues. And I know this is not the political cycle where we feel we're going to be listened to, but even as a 501c3, where you can't advocate for one party against another one, there is nothing against the law for advocating for the issue that you're trying to alleviate. What is the point of keep having a feeding program if you can't go to your government and say, why do we have this happening right now? Why are you fighting health disparities if you're not going to go and say, hey, this needs to stop? We don't just want to run our missions to soothe the problem. We want to solve the problem. A lot of our missions should be to get us out of have to do this mission. There is no reason in the world that children should go home hungry at night, period. So if your mission is feeding children, go out there and advocate, particularly as us as Black folk, that our children can have childhoods. I just talked to somebody and they were telling me their mission is that so that children can have childhoods. We got to start going out there and advocating for that. Then finally, by centering, we're going to look at community empowerment and resilience. By centering Black history, nonprofits empower communities to embrace their heritage, fostering a sense of identity, pride, and resilience. There was a moment when we were told that Black History Month wouldn't be officially talked about on the federal level. And like many of us, I thought, who cares? We as nonprofit people and our nonprofit organizations and our Black nonprofit organizations can go out and be the central part of Black History Month. That no one can ever think that just because you say you're not going to celebrate it or acknowledge it, that we would even have a second thought about it. So that again, there's our churches, our rec centers, our communities, our schools. We can be the central part as a nonprofit organizations to make sure we embrace our heritage and that our community knows about our history. Because as we know, even though we're designating February as Black History Month, there's no reason why we can't celebrate it year round. So again, I'm just going to wrap this up and go over the 5 points again. How can nonprofits be central to preserving Black History Month and Black history in our communities? First of all, we got to document our stories. We got to go out there and ask the questions. We got to collect them and start telling our story. And then once we gather those stories, we need to archive and preserve our cultural history. Then once we archive it so other people can get to it and know the stories, we need to educate and make people aware of what's going on. And then we have to advocate. Advocate. That means open your mouth and tell people what we need and tell our story again. And then be the foundation of community empowerment and resilience, so that no matter what the wider circles say about us and our history, we don't need them because we're going to tell our history. And nonprofits, we are going to be the central to that because we're going to be the central storage place. So again, I'm Dr. Arletta Caldwell of the Urban Nonprofit. If you like this video, like, subscribe, come back. If you have any questions of me, please feel free to use the comment to ask me any questions. Trolls, don't do it. I'm just going to block you. I'm not going to engage in it. This is too important. And if you have any questions about your nonprofit organization, please contact me at Beyond Existing. It's at www.beyondexisting.com. I want to thank you for taking time to look at this video. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please use the comment and I'll talk to you later.